Dallas Cowboys wide receiver CeeDee Lamb gets the bag, but is it the bag that he wanted, or did the Cowboys fold on their end? We got all that and much more for you on today's episode of Locked On NFL.
You are Locked On NFL, your daily NFL podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, football fans, and welcome into another episode of Locked On NFL, your daily podcast covering all the biggest stories from around the National Football League. It's Tuesday, so you've got Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL, myself, Ross Jackson, at Ross Jackson, NOLA on your favorite social media. And on today's episode, we're going to dive into our yike and like to wrap up the show, what we liked, what we didn't like from the week before, diving into, of course, actually what's upcoming, which is the toughest day in the NFL. The Green Bay Packers taking a bit of a flyer in a trade today. What could that mean for the Green Bay Packers? And most importantly, what does it mean for Malik Willis, who was acquired in the trade from the Tennessee Titans? And we're going to kick everything off with a look at the Dallas Cowboys and their new contract extension with CeeDee Lamb. They finally paid somebody. Dallas finally actually buckled down and did it. We're going to break down the contract, what it means, what it looks like, and where it's all headed. We appreciate you very much, as always, for being here, making us your first listen of the day, every day here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now through September 22nd, FanDuel customers will get $5, or excuse me, when you put down $5, we'll get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. All right, Luke, the Dallas Cowboys finally paid somebody. They actually did it. It wasn't quarterback Dak Prescott, but they got the deal done with wide receiver CeeDee Lamb. Before we hear from our friend Landon McCool over at Locked On Cowboys, who covers the Cowboys every single Monday through Friday, just like, how did you expect that they would get this deal done? Like, where did you see of the CeeDee Lamb situation?
That's the deal. It is. We've known for a while that both sides had an intention to get this done. My guess is with a lot of these negotiations, the actual dollar amount, the number that you see reported in the Schefter tweet is agreed to very early in the process. So they knew we're going to pay you about this much. And the staring contest, the negotiation is going to be about the details of structure, of guarantee structure, of just how many years, how long will the Cowboys have team control, and how long will CeeDee Lamb have true job security? Or, you know, is he going to be at risk of being a cap casualty 4 years down the road if the Cowboys are rebuilding? I mean, players don't want to expose themselves to that, no matter how good they think they are.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's going to be the thing you stare at each other over. But when both sides want to get a deal done, most of the time a deal gets done. I don't really think there was, if you were Cowboys fans feeling nervous, I'm glad you don't anymore, but I don't think you really had to.
Yeah. It always sounded like everything from like the entire beginning of the reporting around this situation all the way up to the day that the deal finally got done on Monday. It always felt like, yeah, this was heading in the same direction. For a little bit more context, and Luke, a little bit towards something that you just mentioned, where the negotiations actually did take place. Let's check in with Landon McCool, who covers the Cowboys every Monday through Friday over at Locked On Cowboys.
The wait is finally over. Hi, I'm Landon McCool at the Locked On Cowboys podcast, and the Dallas Cowboys have signed superstar wide receiver CeeDee Lamb to a 4-year, $136 million deal with $38 million guaranteed, the largest ever signing bonus for a wide receiver. And finally, this deal that had been lingering over the Cowboys' head for the entirety of the preseason, the entirety of training camp, finally comes to an end just in time for CeeDee to get maybe hopefully a week of practice in before they have to start their game week practice. This was basically the very end of the deal, could be done without having a pretty serious effect on the regular season. It's great to see the Cowboys finally get it done. And I think for the Cowboys, they had to budge a little bit on the length of the deal. I think that was ultimately the holdup. They wanted 5 years. They ended up with 4, but everyone's happy now that the deal is done. For more on this, make sure you check us out on the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
So I do want to mention here, great stuff from Landon there. It's $100 million guaranteed. And then the $38 million signing bonus is the biggest signing bonus ever given to a receiver. But it is $100 million guaranteed in terms of what the total guarantees look like. But Luke, to your point, you were talking about how like the numbers are probably, the $163 million is probably set. But, there are some other things that typically sound like they need to, that are typically negotiated. And it sounds like it was the length of the contract that maybe was the piece. Maybe CeeDee Lamb wanted to get back out on the market before he hits a certain age. We know that big cutoff point that happens for NFL players in terms of contract negotiations. But the Dallas Cowboys wanted that long-term commitment. So maybe that's where the Dallas Cowboys folded a little bit in the negotiations.
Yeah, that's a big one. I could see that being the concession. And in return, you get what is, I mean, look, there's ways to present all these big giant deals now with cap inflation as the biggest deal of all time and all that stuff. But it seems like a pretty good value for the Cowboys on the whole, and something that I would, if I'm a Cowboys fan, I want to see them re-up at that same proportionate, I guess, but at that same kind of level. That feels like it's right for CeeDee Lamb. If anything, a little low for CeeDee Lamb, but if he's going to get back out on the market when he wants, then yeah, you'd say, okay, yeah, I'll take, shave $5 million off the top, but I get to go to the market earlier. That's going to work for me. So I can see that being kind of the way that the deal finally gets done, is one side makes that concession and then you're good. Interesting that that he didn't want to do 5, but yeah, I guess if you're going to now be negotiating in your age 29 year, not your age 30 year, then yeah, I guess we'll take that.
Yeah, that ends up being the big difference right there, right? Like that one number, that one digit in that age maybe makes a big difference for you in terms of your ability to be able to negotiate, since you're not getting the, next contract extension that will go into your 31, 32, 33 year old kind of range in your career. So that kind of opens the door a little bit for CeeDee Lamb. I think the other thing here that was a bit kind of, when I first saw the contract, I thought it was a little bit low, if I'm being honest, for CeeDee Lamb. But maybe that's, as you mentioned, that's kind of the bargaining chip, right? Of like, okay, you get the 4-year deal, we'll get you out of here so that you can re-up and maybe get a third contract at a later time, or your next contract at an earlier time. But we got to make this deal work. And so they end up making the deal work for, what is it, $34 million per year, which puts them just under, or I guess pretty well under, but just under Justin Jefferson for the second highest paid wide receiver in the league. So he files himself there. And then now all eyes are on Jamar Chase over at Cincinnati to see if Cincinnati and the Bengals will get that deal done. But good on the Dallas Cowboys for finally getting this one finished. And now for the Dallas Cowboys, I guess you turn your eyes to Dak Prescott now too. Like, do you try to get a deal done with him before the season officially begins, with the sort of bonus week here before week 1 practices and all that begins? So it could still be a busy week across the NFL for these remaining contract extensions that are all kind of connected in some way to this wide receiver deal.
Yeah, it's interesting going into this year. This was the second to last year of Dak. This is the contract year. He voids out in 2025 with a ridiculous dead cap number. So it's very clearly built for him to get extended this offseason, or maybe next offseason, like in February or whatever. It is clearly kind of meant to be done now, and that might actually be something that helps their cap situation right now. Dak Prescott looking at a $55 million dead cap number that is intended to be spread out, I think.
Exactly. Yep.
So we'll see what the Cowboys do, but the Dak to Lamb connection has been their backbone now for a while, and it continues to be their backbone. And yeah, looking at, Burrow to Chase over in Cincinnati, Purdy to Aiyuk, what's going on there? That like more pressure goes on those situations now, but I don't know. I feel like unless you have something like an Aiyuk situation where like it's getting weird and you start hearing specific reports about like player not happy, most of the time teams get done. If you hear this side wants it, that side wants it, it's getting done.
Yep, absolutely. All right, coming up next. Oh, and by the way, if you want to keep up with what's going on with the Dallas Cowboys, Dak Prescott moving forward, make sure you go and check out Locked On Cowboys with Landon and Marcus. And of course, you could check out James and Jake over at Locked On Bengals, figure out what's going on with Jamar Chase in that conversation. Coming up next, our next conversation, we're going to move over to Luke's good friends of the NFC North, the Green Bay Packers, who pulled off a trade for a quarterback, which is really interesting because they were just lauding performance of a rookie quarterback as their new QB2. So what's happening here? We're going to break that all down as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On NFL.
Today's episode of Locked On NFL is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can get a free 3-week trial of NFL Sunday Ticket with any $5 bet. Just lay down $5 on whatever you think, any kind of futures bet. For example, Dak Prescott over under 4,075.5 yards. So if you think he's going to have a 4,100 yard season, for example, now with CeeDee Lamb locked up and everything good to go in Dallas, you can lay $5 on that and get 3 weeks of NFL Sunday Ticket with a YouTube TV base plan. You'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out of market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime, so don't worry about it. FanDuel.com/locked on. Go to FanDuel.com/locked on to download America's #1 sportsbook.
All right, we continue on with today's episode of Locked On NFL. Appreciate you very much for being here, making us your first listen. Don't forget for your second listen today to go and check out Locked On Fantasy Football. Vinny Iyer and Michelle Majuk making you the smartest fantasy football players in your league with fresh episodes every single Monday through Friday, getting you ready for your fantasy football season. Go and check them out wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Luke, the Green Bay Packers did something on Monday that kind of confused me, if I'm being a little bit honest. All right. And I'm going to need you
Sean
to
Clifford stocks in the trash.
So, look, so obviously Jordan Love gets his big contract extension and everything like that this offseason, just as we expected. No conversation, no qualms, no confusion about who the starting quarterback is in Green Bay. But I just heard Peter Bukowski over at Locked On Packers talking all about how that preseason win that they just had, which was a dominant win, and it was a culture building win, which is hysterical to hear about a preseason game. But good,
Peter,
great, I know, but still
Classic
great.
Peter.
It's great. But he was talking about all that, and then called it a Pratt summer and all this other stuff, and fans are all talking about how Michael Pratt's going to be the QB2 over there. There's a lot of hope, and look, he's a Tulane guy, so I here in New Orleans are very much rooting for a Pratt summer, if you will. But I'm a little bit confused at the trade of a 2025 7th round pick for Malik
Pratt
Willis.
Summer my yike of the week? My goodness gracious. Yeah. We need to stop standing bad quarter. I didn't watch any of the Michael Pratt, so I shouldn't talk about it.
He did have a solid preseason outing.
Enter Malik Willis, I guess. Yep.
Yeah, and how much is he really entering? Because we've never really seen Malik Willis pan out. I mean, there was a lot of good coming from him coming out of college. And, he was one of those guys that, came into that draft class that only had one first round pick, but the expectations were still high. And he didn't pan out, anywhere. And then now he ends up being traded away from Tennessee and then lands with Green Bay, who, look, has done a good job developing young quarterbacks, Jordan Love. And then, of course, you look at what they've done with Aaron Rodgers. But then there's all these other examples of quarterbacks that weren't their starting go-to guys that either came in or went out and everything. So I'm just curious about where Malik Willis really stands in terms of his opportunity there in Green Bay. If Michael Pratt's going to be the backup guy, then Malik Willis isn't going to see many snaps in those practice reps and things like that. So, where's the value here for Green Bay?
So what do we think is more likely? That Green Bay saw Sean Clifford kind of fall apart and went, we got to move on from this thing, and saw some decent stuff from Michael Pratt as a rookie, a developmental guy, and went, maybe we should get a backup with a little starting experience. What's more likely, that they actually thought that Michael Pratt is QB2 and they brought in Willis to be QB3, or that we're maybe overrating a preseason game a little bit?
That's a really good call. So maybe the Malik Willis acquisition is about him being QB2.
And with Pratt, shows you some promise.
Right.
Put him on ice. You're with the threes. You're doing scout. You're developing. Malik Willis is on. He's got 2 years left of team control, so he can be the backup for a couple of years. Stylistically, he can do some of the improvisational stuff that Love does. So you're not, if Jordan Love goes down, you didn't waste time working on a scramble drill. Malik Willis can do that and give you the mobility and some of those same stresses that your offense is now designed around. And Michael Pratt on ice. That feels like a QB room you can feel a lot happier with than if you have to start coping with Sean Clifford. For a seventh?
Yeah.
It feels like a way
for a seventh,
more solid.
for sure. Yeah. And this is that time, right? This is the time to where players that would otherwise be cut could potentially be moved for these day 3 picks and things like that. We're seeing it all around the NFL already with cut day today, which we'll highlight here in a little bit. But yeah, okay, that's a situation that makes a lot more sense to me. Is that if he's coming in, it's just funny coming off of the heels of all the QB2 talk around Michael Pratt after that final preseason game.
Well, QB2 because he's beating Sean Clifford. But that's the thing you always forget about on cut down day is that who won the backup job? Sometimes neither of them. And there's a guy coming from another team that's going to take it. Yeah, that might be the move. And with Willis, I mean, we look at he was a 3rd round pick for the Titans. Ultimately, the disappointment is just on people that thought he was a top 10 player.
Yeah,
you were wrong. But the Titans 3rd round pick didn't work out. You trade him away. It's not that big of a deal. Probably worth the swing on a quarterback in the 3rd.
Yeah, always worth the swing for sure. And especially somebody that came in with as many tools, as many positive traits and plus traits as a Malik Willis and everything. I don't know that Tennessee ever really had the system either at the time that Malik Willis was to be the person, right? If there was ever going to be an opportunity for him to do that. I don't know that they had the system that really supported that. I think their system now is a little bit more supportive of it, but they're really happy with Will Levis as well. They should be. And then so now you get the opportunity here for Malik Willis to head somewhere to continue to develop. The other part in this that's really interesting for me too is what this says about Tennessee. Pretty clear that if that were to be the case, or with that being the case, that they were comfortable moving on from Malik Willis. Maybe they were planning to move on from Malik Willis. They've got Mason Rudolph there now behind Will Levis. Maybe they feel pretty comfortable with what they can get from Mason Rudolph. So it says something about the Tennessee Titans, at least at this moment, that they're at least comfortable with what they have at the top of their quarterback room. But I'll be curious to see if maybe they go and pursue a veteran as well.
If you got traded for a 7th round pick or less, you got cut.
Yeah, you were going to get cut, right?
You got cut, but you had a contract, 2 years left of a 3rd round rookie contract. You got cut.
Yeah. It's funny, the experience that you just explained too of, the Sean Clifford and Michael Pratt QB2 battle. Maybe neither of them won it, so they went out and they got a new guy to be that QB2. I kind of expected to see that here in New Orleans between Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler, that neither of them, because for so long they were neck and neck. I expected for a little while that maybe neither of them would pan out, and then the Saints would just go back to the market and find somebody to be like their veteran backup quarterback. So it's an interesting thing that you would express in that, because I think that we see that, or at least opportunities for that, pretty often. And so this sounds more like a wise move for Green Bay, as opposed to the confusing move that I kind of perceived it to be at the time. Pragmatic.
Yeah, bolstering your backup quarterback is smart. I don't know, hard to see a downside, especially just on a flyer, and the expectation is so much less. When he was in Tennessee, he was supposed to compete with Malik or with Levis, and there was all of these interesting things that could happen. And okay, Levis is the starter. You lost that job. You lost the backup job to Mason Rudolph. Now you're in backup status, and you might get cut next year if Michael Pratt continues to develop, and that's okay.
Yeah. And then it'll be 2 Pratt summers, as Luke would say. All right.
No.
All right. Luke XCX. All right. Coming up next, we're going to take a look at our yike and our like, what we liked, what we didn't like from the week. But I'm going to go forward in time and tell you why we're about to experience one of the toughest days in the NFL. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On NFL, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, everybody, wrapping up today's episode of Locked On NFL. Luke and I love wrapping it up with our yike and our like. We missed it last week. We kind of folded them into the episode because there was so much QB conversation to get to. So we're excited to get back to it today. And Luke, if you're okay, if you're okay with it, I'll kick us off on this one just because I'll be quick with this. But the yike here is cut day. Look, a lot of guys are going to make a roster, and that's awesome. But over 1,000 guys are not going to find their way to a roster. And then 16 guys for every team are going to end up on a practice squad, and they're going to have additional opportunities and stuff like that. And some of those phones will also ring throughout the season. It's a league of attrition. Guys got to stay ready. and all those other pieces. But it is always a really tough and challenging day when any coach has to sit down and tell, and especially now that you're going from 90 to 53 all in one fell swoop, you're having to sit down and tell, was that 87, 37 players that hey, you're not making the roster. And that's all kind of in one day. And that's really tough. And so we always end up having the episode that's right before cut days happen, because Luke and I so long have done these Tuesday episodes. And with that being the case, we always kind of want to put out a little thing that just kind of says, hey, remember that these are like human beings in these situations.
Dreams
and
are ending
sucks.
here.
Yeah. And
these are for the vast majority of these players have dreamt about being in the NFL since they were kids. And then they're here at the NFL. And this is, for a lot of them, especially, the long shot types, the undrafted rookies, the futures contract, guys that haven't, that didn't make the team for 2 years in a row and are not making the team again a third time. It's the deal. We all know it. We know, and guys know that they're long shots. But yeah, it's dreams coming to a close. A lot of these guys are going to go work at Lowe's now, and that's, they're going to have to go get whatever their new job is, find a new chapter, but chapters are ending. Yeah.
And remember,
you worked
too,
really hard for, and you bled.
Yeah. It wasn't just that, like, you dreamed about it, but you also worked a lot to get to this point, and you worked a lot harder than a lot of other people to get to this part. And it's a lot of people's individual dreams, but they're not the only ones affected. Their families are affected, all that as well. In some cases, kids, family at home, parents, all that also affected. So just something to keep in mind over the course of the next, I'll just call it 24 hours for the sake of conversation. But then outside of that, we get to celebrate the guys that do make these 53-man rosters, that do end up on the 16-man practice squad. So at least there will be some silver lining by the time that it's all said and done. Why don't you want to start us off with your yike or your like today?
We'll start with the like. I think the Patriots are being smart. Here's the thing. The Patriots are rife with yikes. There's yikes all over the place. Yike here, yike there.
Yike here, yike there.
That is you're a yike everywhere. That is a horrible place to just throw a rookie into the fire. And at least according to Josina Anderson, they're not going to do that right away. I mean, we had guys running into each other in the preseason. We like that, especially up front, just not a place that is ready to nurture the development of a quarterback. Now, and like a lot of people say, the only way to learn is on the job for a quarterback. Right? Nothing replaces live reps. And that's true to a point, but live reps don't do anything if they're so messed up that you can't learn from them. And we have seen that play out so many times in this league. Justin Fields is the one coming to my mind right now. It feels so much like those 2021 Bears in New England right now. Just put Jacoby Brissett in, and it sounds like that's what they're going to do. So I think that's the right move. As excited as they are about Drake May, wait till it's finished. Wait till that thing's ready, right? Don't take this cake out of the oven before it's baked.
That's right. I was gonna make a souffle reference, but I think the cake reference is probably way less bougie. I completely agree.
It's so New Orleans of you.
It's so New Orleans of me. Let me tell you why I baked Alaska. I think that, or my bananas Foster. All right. Anyway, I'm with you on that, man. I really I applaud the Patriots for being patient in this situation. It's so hard. It's so easy rather to be impatient when you've got a fresh rookie quarterback that everyone's excited about, that's a top pick and all these other things, to just try to rush right into it. This is a situation where you didn't need to do that. It's the exact opposite situation, or not the exact opposite, but it's a very different situation than the Washington Commanders anointing Jaden Daniels as their starting quarterback. There's no better option. There's no other option. And at least you have a competitive team that can keep a guy upright and all these other things. There's a lot to still fix over in New England. No reason to rush this guy back, and so or rush this guy in rather. And so I'm with you on that one. My like is to keep quick. I just love watching from afar, and this is going to be very local for me. But I just love watching from afar Sean Payton just not changing at all. just still being the same. Just still being the same dude. he and the Denver Broncos have moved on from wide receiver Tim Patrick. That is not a like for me. But what is a like for me is that like just Sean being Sean, man. Just like we'll just move on from wide receivers that are really that are good and that have contributed and all these other things because he just knows his scheme. He knows he can scheme up and not spend money at that position and everything. And so this guy that's been beloved in Denver for so long, actually 2 exits now between Justin Simmons, who's now in Atlanta, and then Tim Patrick, who is TBD, having been moved on from since Sean Payton showed up or it's over the course of the Sean Payton offseason. It's such an interesting one. And then Denver, another like for me in that is Jarrett Stidham. Jarrett Stidham believes he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. I'll be honest with you, I don't agree, but I love the confidence behind all of it, and I love the fact too that even though he believes that about himself, he's still like, I'm going to do everything that I can to help Bo Nix be successful. And Bo Nix, of course, was named the starting quarterback over in Denver, as we discussed last week, was a possibility. And so shout out to Jarrett Stidham for kind of taking the high road on that
one. I'm going to go, speaking of QB competitions, can I never once again hear about the potential of Trey Lance? Can you believe we had serious people that take themselves seriously, looking you dead in the eye and saying, well, I don't know if they have to extend Dak Prescott. They've got Trey Lance. This dude is not an NFL player. All right. He hasn't been an NFL player for a while. He got dumped for a 4th round pick, which is a 4th round pick the Cowboys wasted. You can get more than what Trey Lance is for a 4th round pick. I get it on the flyer, right? But so much easier to talk me into a flyer on a bad quarterback when it's a 7th, like in Green Bay with Malik Willis,
right?
Than it is with Trey Lance. The 5 interception. I mean, that's a Madden meltdown. I turned the difficulty up too high and I tried to play a whole game stats in a preseason game. So you're not even playing against the best the Chargers have to offer. Right. And you're doing that. And if you watch the interceptions, you not only see, some bad throws and there's like some tips, there's some stuff where you could maybe blame somebody else or pressure or whatever, but you see completely uncomfortable in the pocket.
Yeah.
Completely misreading plays. I mean, just not seeing defenses at all. The brain's not working. The leg's not working. The arm's not working. What is the point of this guy? Get him out of my news feed. Stop telling me he has potential. So does Noah Lyles. You're not going to put him on the field.
Right. I wonder how much that part of the conversation, like if the Cowboys were even as much as entertaining that alternative, I wonder how much of that performance kind of made them go, we should probably get this Dak Prescott contract done. Like we should probably stop messing around. And then, so now they get the CeeDee Lamb deal done. And then now they can focus on it.
All right, this Trey Lance dream wasn't going to work. If you held on to that Trey Lance dream, by the way, beyond like the first preseason game, you're a homer. I'm sorry. You need to open your eyes. This dude is trash. It's okay. It's fine. You lit a 4th round pick on fire. Whatever. Sometimes 4th round pick rookies get cut. Like there have been worse 4th round pick spendings out there.
Oh yes.
Let it go. Let it die.
Yeah. I think it's over with. I think he's going to end up being cut by the time that's all said and done. I don't know how he continues with the team, unless the team just wants to save face and say, look, we gotta. Yeah, exactly. Right. He'll be a UFL guy before it's all said and done, and maybe get an opportunity to develop beyond that. But I just don't see it working for him in the NFL. And then we'll see. We'll see if he ends up surviving roster cuts here over the rest of today. So that's what's going to be up next. By the way, in tomorrow's episode, James and Chris going to keep you up to date with everything going on roster cuts around the NFL. We've got some exciting announcements here on the show as well, so stay tuned on that. And we'll see you again here real soon. For Luke Braun at Luke Braun NFL on your favorite social media, I am Ross Jackson at Ross Jackson Nola. We will see you here soon again on the Locked On NFL podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.